Hello guys, in today's lesson we are going to continue with multiplying out brackets and we are going to do some exercises that combines the previous lessons. First, let us address the issue of fractions. The approach remains the same with fractions. We simply multiply everything in the left, the brackets in the left, with everything in the brackets on the right. So we are going to take the first term in the first bracket, a half of x, and multiply that with 5 over 3 times x. So let's start with a half times 5 over 3. What we do is we multiply the numerators, so 1 times 5, which is 5, and then 2 times 3, which is 6 in the denominator. Now we are done with multiplying the coefficients, so we only need to multiply x with x. So x times x will create x squared. The second term that we are going to multiply with is 9 over 2y. And we follow the same process. 1 times 9 in the numerator is 9. And then in the denominator we have 2 times 2, which will become 4. And now the variables that we need to multiply is x multiply with y, which is x, y. Now we have multiplied the first term with everything in the bracket on the right. Now we're going to multiply the second term with everything in the bracket on the right. Notice we have a negative, and both of these values are positive. So negative times a positive will create a negative. Then we multiply the numerators, so 2 times 5 is 10. The denominators, 3 times 3, which is 9. And then the variables, y times x, which we are going to write as xy. We always write the variables in alphabetical order. The last multiplication that needs to happen is the second term in the first bracket multiplied with the second term in the second bracket. It's a negative multiplied with a positive, which gives us a negative value. Then we multiply the numerators, so 2 times 9, which is 18. And the denominators, 3 times 2, which gives us 6. And then y times y, which will become y squared. To continue, we need to now identify like terms. Let's start with the first term, 5 over 6 x squared. There are no other x squares in the expression, so it's alone. So we just need to rewrite 5 over 6 and x squared. Then the next two terms, the 9 over 4xy and the negative 10 over 9xy are like terms because they have the same variable. What we need to do is to create a common denominator. And the simplest thing for us to do is to multiply 4 with 9, so the denominator would be 36. So what we need to do with this first term is create 36 at the bottom. And we do that by multiplying 4 with 9, which will become 36 in the denominator. But now that I've multiplied the denominator with 9, I need to do the same with the numerator. So 9 times 9 will give us 81. And then we have x, y. The third term in the expression also has the variables x, y, so to create a common denominator, I need to multiply 9 with 4. So 9 times 4 will create 36 as well. And now that I've multiplied the denominator with 4, I also need to multiply the numerator with 4. So 10 times 4 is 40. The last term is standing alone because there is no other y square as a variable in the expression. But we can simplify this. 18 divided by 6 will become 3. So it's 3y squared. The last thing that we can do is add up these two fractions of the like terms. So we have already established there is not another x squared, so we just copy that down. Then these two now have the same denominator and the same variable, so we can subtract the numerators from each other. So 81 minus 40 is equal to positive 41 over 36. And the variables do not change because they are like terms. I simply subtract the numerators in the fractions from each other. And our last term we simply bring down. What you can do, sometimes the instructions would say change your answer to mixed fractions and don't leave it as an improper fraction. This is an improper fraction because the numerator, which is 41, is bigger than the denominator of 36. So 36 can go into 41 once. And then there's a difference between 36 and 41 of 5. So that's the remainder. And we simply bring the y squared down. So in our second example, we are combining everything we learned in the previous sections. So we have two brackets that we need to multiply out. We have a square bracket that we need to subtract. And we need to multiply out this single bracket on this side. Let's start working through it one pair of brackets or one part at a time. So the first two brackets, when I work with those, I will ignore the rest of the sum. So I'm not going to consider the rest, I'm just multiplying out these two. So I have a times a, which is a square, a times negative 3b, which becomes negative 3ab. Then I multiply negative b with a, so that becomes negative ab. Okay, and the last one is negative b multiplied with negative 3b. Negative multiplied with a negative becomes plus 3b squared. Now I have multiplied out the first set of brackets. The next part of the sum is we need to subtract a plus b squared. So I'm going to rewrite it by expanding it. So it's minus a plus b times a plus b. Notice that I'm putting it into square brackets to show that I will subtract the solution of these two brackets multiplied out. Our third term that we need to multiply is easy because we can add it. So it's a times a, which is a squared, a times 6b, which is plus 6ab. To simplify our sum, we can add up like terms before we multiply out this bracket. So a square. I go through all the terms and see there is another a square. So a square plus a square is 2a square. Now I'm done with the a squares. Then ab. There is negative 3ab minus another ab plus 6ab. So negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4 plus 6. So it will be plus 2ab. If I add up all of the like terms which I highlighted. So I am now done with the ABs. The next term is plus 3b squared. There's not another b squared, so it's simply plus 3b squared. And what I'm left with is subtracting the brackets which I still need to multiply out. So now let's multiply out this bracket. Notice I'm writing it in square brackets because I need to subtract a plus b squared from the full solution. That's why we are keeping the subtraction right through up until the end. So a times a is a square. Then we have a times b, which is plus ab. Then b times a, which is plus ab, and b times b, which is plus b squared. Before I finish off the sum, I'm going to now remove my final square brackets. So it is 2a squared plus 2ab plus 3b squared. And in the previous lessons, we discussed how to remove brackets. We say that that's a negative 1 in front of the bracket. That's negative 1 times a square, which is negative a square. Then negative 1 times ab, and again times ab. So it's negative ab, negative ab. And then lastly, negative 1 times plus b squared. That becomes negative b squared. And in our final step, what we are going to do is add up like terms. So we start again with 2a squared, and I go through all the terms and I see there is a negative a squared. So 2 minus 1a squared is a squared. We do not have to write the 1 in the front. Now I'm done with 2a squared. Then I look at 2ab. We have plus 2ab minus 1ab minus 1ab. So 2 minus 1 is 1, and then I subtract another 1, so it is 0 ab's. And lastly, we have 3b squared, and negative b squared is also a like term to 3b squared. So it is 3b squared minus 1b squared, which is plus 2b squared. And if you remember from our previous lessons, we said we don't write 0ab. We don't write a 0 times a variable or variables. We simply ignore them. So our final answer is a squared plus 2b squared.